In 16th century Germany, punishment was not always about blood, it was about breaking the spirit. The mask of shame, or Schammaske, was one of the most chilling tools of public humiliation ever devised. Forged from cold iron, it was crafted not for protection, but for degradation. While executioners used blades and ropes to end life, blacksmiths used their skill to destroy dignity. The mask was a form of social torture. It was not meant for murderers or traitors, but for those who had broken the unspoken codes of morality and behavior, especially women. Wives accused of gossip, servants accused of lying, or widows rumored to be loose-tongued could all find themselves forced to wear these grotesque iron creations. Each mask told its own story. For gossipers, there was the Schammaske with a long, forked-tongued iron slab that hung from the mouth, dragging painfully with every step. For liars, a pig's snout, or donkey's muzzle. For gluttons, a mask with an open mouth full of spikes. These were not random designs. Each grotesque feature symbolized the vice the wearer was accused of, turning the punishment into a living caricature. It was theater, a dark performance staged in the streets of German towns and cities, where the offender was paraded through marketplaces, jeered at by neighbors, and sometimes tied to posts for hours. The crowd was the executioner's accomplice, laughing, pointing, and sometimes throwing filth or stones in this cruel ritual. The line between justice and entertainment blurred completely. The iron masks were heavy, sometimes weighing up to 10 or 15 pounds inside. They were lined with rough metal edges that scraped the skin. Breathing was difficult. Speaking was impossible. The condemned person's face would sweat and bleed as they stumbled through the streets, unable to wipe their eyes or mouth. In some cases, the mask was attached with a padlock, and the wearer was left for hours or even days. If they fainted, they fell face first into the dirt, the mask still locked around their head. The punishment was meant to correct behavior through terror and pain, to make the act of humiliation worse than the original sin. What's most disturbing is how ordinary these punishments became. Town records from Nuremberg, Augsburg, and Regensburg show that the Schammaske was a common tool of local magistrates. It didn't require a trial in the modern sense, just an accusation, often by neighbors. A jealous rival, a suspicious husband, or a self-righteous priest could set the process in motion. In one recorded case from 1570, a woman named Margaretha was accused of slander and loud quarreling. Her sentence: 2 hours in the town square wearing a mask shaped like a donkey's head, with a bell attached so everyone could hear her coming. The bells jingled as she walked, announcing her disgrace to the entire town. Another case described a baker's wife accused of spreading rumors about a nobleman's affair. She was fitted with a mask, whose iron tongue was spiked on the inside, pressing down painfully against her real one. Every attempt to speak only drove the spikes deeper. The masks were designed not to kill immediately, but to break the person slowly. In cold weather, the metal froze to the skin. In heat, it burned. Many collapsed from exhaustion or dehydration. Some died from infection when the raw flesh beneath the mask began to rot. Yet for the authorities, the spectacle worked that kept others silent. Fear was the most effective law. Men were not entirely exempt, though they were punished differently. Drunkards, gamblers, and men who insulted officials could be made to wear masks with horns or animal faces. One infamous example, the goose mask, was used for those who were talkative or foolish. But in most towns, it was women who bore the brunt. The Schammaske was part of a wider culture of public shaming in Europe at the time. Stocks, pillories, and cucking stools served the same purpose: to expose the offender, to destroy their reputation before destroying their body. In a deeply religious and patriarchal society, public humiliation was seen as both punishment and moral cleansing. What made the Schammaske particularly horrifying was its intimacy. It attacked the face, the most personal, visible part of a person. It turned individuality into mockery. The victim could not hide or speak in their defense. Their humanity was replaced by the monstrous image the mask imposed upon them. The church often supported these punishments. Clergy argued that public shame could lead to repentance. In sermons, preachers described the sham mask as a mirror of sin, a way for the sinner to wear their vice upon their face. Yet beneath the surface, it was also a way to enforce silence, especially among women whose voices were seen as dangerous for many. The humiliation continued long after the mask was removed. Neighbors whispered, employers refused to hire them, children pointed in the streets. The sham mask did not just punish a crime, it branded a person for life. As the Renaissance gave way to the Enlightenment, ideas about justice began to shift. Some scholars and philosophers criticized such punishments as barbaric relics. Yet shame masks remained in use well into the 17th and even early 18th centuries, especially in rural areas where traditional authority still ruled. Behind the metallic cruelty of the sham mask lies a deeper truth about early modern Europe. That punishment was not simply a matter of law, but of control. It was about silencing voices, particularly female voices that threatened the fragile order of family, church, and community. The mask of shame was, in essence, a weapon of fear. Its power came not only from pain, but from visibility. Every citizen who saw it was reminded of what could happen if they dared to speak too loudly, question authority, or simply step out of line. To wear the sham mask was to lose your face literally and symbolically. It was to be made less than human, a living warning to others. In towns where these punishments were carried out, the iron masks were displayed afterward on walls or posts, their hollow eyes staring forever into the crowd. They were trophies of order, reminders that in a world obsessed with obedience and conformity, shame was sometimes more feared than death itself. As Europe moved into the 17th and 18th centuries, the winds of change began to stir. The sham mask, once a common symbol of civic discipline and moral enforcement, started to draw criticism from philosophers, humanists, and reformers who saw it as a grotesque relic of a cruel age. Yet even as Enlightenment ideals of dignity and rational justice spread, the mask's ghost lingered in the alleys and courtrooms of old towns. The transformation was not sudden. In smaller villages, where the local magistrate and parish priest still held near absolute power, public shaming remained a useful tool. Punishment was as much performance as justice, meant to reaffirm authority before the eyes of the people. Even as execution methods became more civilized, humiliation continued to serve as social control. Ironically, the sham mask began to fade not because society became kinder, but because power began to move behind closed doors. The age of public torture gave way to bureaucratic punishment. Prisons, asylums, and workhouses, where once the condemned was displayed before a crowd, now they disappeared into walls. The pain did not end, only its visibility changed. Still, the symbolic power of the shame mask persisted. Museums across Germany and Central Europe now display these terrible objects: long tongues, twisted mouths, grotesque animal visages, silent reminders of how a society can weaponize ridicule. Their cold metal faces seem almost alive, each one whispering stories of those forced to wear them. Women who spoke too much, servants who laughed too loud, men who mocked authority. One can almost imagine the sound of iron scraping against skin, the muffled breathing, the bell's faint ring echoing through the narrow streets. For centuries, that sound meant order. It meant obedience. When reformers began documenting the cruelty of such punishments, they found records that shocked even the hardened bureaucrats of the time. Reports detailed fainting victims, severe infections, and suicides following public humiliation. Philosophers like Cesare Beccaria, who wrote on crimes and punishments in 1764, argued that justice should not rely on cruelty or shame, but on reason. His ideas helped dismantle centuries of ritualized degradation. By the 18th century, shame masks were disappearing from official use, yet the mentality behind them, the desire to control through fear of humiliation, remained deeply embedded in European culture. Instead of iron masks, people began to wear social ones: ridicule, exclusion, scandal. Society had learned to punish with whispers instead of chains. Today, the sham mask survives in museums and archives, its once feared presence transformed into curiosity. But when one stands before it, the hollow eye holes, the jagged mouth frozen in a silent scream, it is impossible not to feel the weight of its history. It represents the invisible violence of humiliation, the centuries-long war waged against the powerless, especially women. The mask was never just a device. It was a mirror. It reflected the fears of a world obsessed with control, a society terrified of voices it couldn't contain. Every long tongue and animal snout was an accusation disguised as art, a warning carved in metal: obey or lose your face. And though the physical masks were melted or locked away, the culture of shame they represented still echoes today in the way societies judge, isolate, and silence those who don't conform. The 16th century townspeople who jeered at the masked sinner may have vanished, but the impulse to humiliate in the name of morality has not. Standing before one of these iron visages, it's hard not to think of the unnamed victims who once bore them, the women who spoke out of turn, the servants who talked back, the poor souls who became living jokes for a crowd's amusement. Their pain was turned into a spectacle, their suffering forgotten as soon as the laughter faded. Yet history remembers, not through names, but through objects. And the sham mask endures as one of the most haunting relics of Europe's moral theater. Its rusted form speaks louder than any record, reminding us that cruelty often hides behind virtue, and humiliation has always been a weapon of control. The mask of shame may have been removed centuries ago, but its spirit still lingers. In the way power ridicules dissent, in how humiliation is used to discipline, and in how the human face, that symbol of identity, can still be weaponized. Every time we laugh at someone's downfall, every time public disgrace is treated as entertainment, we echo those jeering medieval crowds. We become their descendants, still watching, still judging. The sham mask is more than a curiosity from a brutal past. It is a warning, a reminder that justice without compassion becomes cruelty, that morality without mercy becomes tyranny, and that the most dangerous punishments are not those that kill the body, but those that crush the soul. If this story compels you, if history has silent iron faces stirs something within, then share it, study it, speak about it, because the only way to truly remove the mask of shame is to remember the faces it once hid.